Hey everybody, welcome back to the Engineered Angler. I'm back in the shop. I was doing a little fishing this weekend, but it's scallop season here in Florida and there were probably 1,000 boats in the area I wanted to fish. You could have walked from boat to boat. But in the meantime, I've been making some lures on the lathe, some topwater lures, and I've been experimenting with putting rattles in them. Now all there is in here, you can hear it, it's just a steel ball, 1/4 inch steel ball, and I'm not really happy with that sound, so I was doing a little more experimentation to see if I could get a higher pitched sound, and I made a bigger one, and I was able to do it. And kind of tricky, but I actually got the sound I want. So you get a nice almost metallic ping when you rattle it. I think it carries a little further. Anyway, I like it. If the fish don't, well, they can get their own rattles. So I'm gonna get back to the lathe and show you the technique I use to get a rattle in this and get it to sound nice and tight. Well, first, let me prep this blank. I'm going to mount it and get it semi-round, and then we'll get to shaping and getting that rattle in it. So I got this one end rounded, more or less. I'm going to stick it in the chuck, and then we'll go from there. So at this point, you really need to know what your lure is going to look like, where you're going to have the head, and so on. So my expectations is that I'm going to make a lure about 3 inches long, and that's about 7.5 centimeters. So now you've got to do a little planning on the interior lure. My lure is going to be some kind of a torpedo shape. The belly eye is going to be about 1/3 of the way back, and so I want that chamber to start there and run back like that. So the ball will be right in there. So I'm going to drill through. So I've got to figure out where my bit has to stop drilling. So what I want to have in there is that ball, and that's 1/4 inch, give or take. So I'm using a 5/16 bit. I've got the chuck mounted. Now I need to know how deep I need to go. I need to mark this bit. So I'm going to set it here, and I know I don't want to go any farther than right there. That's going to be the size of my chamber, which is plenty long. That's about 1 1/4 inches. And I want to stop the bit back here. So I've got a piece of tape on there, as you can see. So I need to put my live end back in. You need to make sure you've got a live end with a broad angle on it so that it hits right on the outside of that hole. Okay, that looks pretty nicely balanced and centered. So now I'm going to go ahead and shape it. So an important part of your control as far as the design is knowing how fat that end piece has to be. You don't want it to be so small that it doesn't leave much meat around the hole. So I know that's how big my hole is in there, and so I'm leaving enough. Another little trick is to keep your marked drill bit around as a depth gauge, so you can see the proportions of where the end of your chamber is and the size of your lure. I'm going to take this back just a little bit, maybe another 1/4 inch. It's leaving a really coarse surface, so I'm going to have to take it down with sandpaper. So I'll leave it a little big and reduce it with the sandpaper, and hopefully I'll get a nice surface. I'm leaving this stock. Now when you do this, you got to plan ahead and leave yourself enough stock here, because this is what I'm going to use as a plug for the actual chamber. So now I got to sand. So that's looking pretty good. Got a little bit of a crack here I'm gonna have to resolve. Okay, so I had to use a little crazy glue to fix that crack. The next step is to remove this base and create a nice flat surface on this back so that when I put in the plug, it fits flush. That's always a little spooky. Okay, now I've got a nice flush end here. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut it off here as well. Okay. Now my next step is to shape the plug, which is essentially just making a little dowel. Okay, at this step, I've made a decision on how big I want that plug to be, and I just want it to be about 1/2 inch. And then the back here will be the finished end of my lure. I wish this wood wasn't so soft. I picked a bad piece of wood. Hopefully it'll hold up. Okay, so I've got this caliper set at the thickness of my bit, and it's really close, so I don't want to go too much farther. So now we just got to proof it with the actual lure. And that looks pretty close. I'm going to take it down a little bit with some sandpaper so I don't burst the lure. That's pretty good. So now I can slide that in there. There you go. So I'm going to sand this little divot off the end so I can support it. Doesn't matter that it's a little off round. I don't really care about the I'm not going to work on this anymore. I'm going to work on this end. Before I can actually put the steel shot in there and assemble this, I've actually got to do one little trick. This is the trick that actually gives it that high ping sound. Is I take a nail that has a head slightly smaller than that diameter, and I cut that head off. So the next step is to put this here. And you can just shove it in place, put a drop of crazy glue on it. I need to do the same thing on the inside of this thing. So I'll take another nail, and now I've taken this little Allen wrench and glued a tiny little magnet on it. You don't have to do that. You can use just some contact cement, put a little dab on there, and it'll work just fine. The idea is to be able to shove this down there and then pull it off without losing the magnet. So first thing I'm gonna do is put a couple of drops of glue down inside there, and then I'll just shove it down there and hold it, and you can pull this off, and you've got your clacker in there. Right, so our next step is to go ahead and drop our ball in there. So now I'm going to glue this on with a little bit of Elmer's glue, and then I'll give it a touch of crazy glue at the edge just to hold it in place, and we'll finish it off. And get it nicely seated. And then I'm going to go ahead and reinforce everything with this crazy glue, because you can see the crack is opening up on me. Point, I'm going to finish the shaping with some sandpaper, being careful not to knock my knuckles. So the only thing left is to separate it from the base and finish it. And there it is. Nice hard rattle. Eyes are right in the right spot. All I gotta do is do a little hand sanding. Okay, so after a little bit of light sanding, I got a pretty nice lure actually. One of the dangers of making things out of wood that you harvest from fallen trees and branches is that you never know what you're going to find on the inside. I really enjoy doing that, but it's probably not the best thing. But I really like that sound. And just after a little bit of sanding, it works out pretty well. Using crazy glue and accelerator really makes things work fast, and it actually creates a really nice, hard, smooth surface that you can sand and make some nice, easy repairs. And so when I get them all painted up, I'll show them to you. Thank you for watching, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe and keep checking in. I try to post every week, and hopefully we'll keep on going with lure making, a little bit of fishing, and some engineering. Thanks for watching.